Our next speaker is John Ross. John Ross is Senior Fellow at the Chongyang Institute for Financial Studies at Renmin University of China. Since 1992 and the publication in Russia of Why the Economic Reform Succeeded in China and Will Fail in Russia and Eastern Europe, he has authored, which was a very prescient article, he has authored over 500 published articles on China's economy and geopolitical relations. He has many followers on China's Weibo, the Chinese equivalent of Twitter, and his articles on China's economy have won several prizes in China. He's the author of 2 best-selling books published in Chinese, The Great Chess Game and Don't Misunderstand China's Economy. His new book in English is China's Great Road, Lessons for Marxist Theory and Socialist Practices. John, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, let's look at the manifesto 1 year on and test it against the big events which have taken place. For me, this is one of the most important places in what we may call the global north, which has managed to maintain its bearings amidst the events which are taking place. And what are the events which are taking place? They are the rising curve, an increase in escalation of military aggression by the United States. Let's look at what has taken place. 1999, the first stage was the United States increasingly militarily attacked developing countries. So we had the attack on Serbia, in the bombing of Serbia in 1999, the invasion of Afghanistan in 2001, the invasion of Iraq in 2003, the bombing of Libya in 2011, the US intervention in Syria from 2011 up to the present stage. But now the United States has passed a new qualitative threshold. That is, the United States has decided that it will take the risk of a war, a confrontation with a major nuclear armed state. That is the United States' creation of the war in Ukraine, because there should be not the slightest doubt about this, that the United States and its attempt to expand the war expand NATO into Ukraine is responsible for this war. Indeed, the United States has been prepared to plunge the European continent into chaos as a result of that. We have a major war in Europe. We have rapid inflation. We have economic crisis and political crisis in several European countries. What does the United States wish to follow this up with? It wishes to impose the same upon Asia. That is by its attempt to create the same type of conflict around Taiwan against China. Fortunately, the Asian states, because most of them are in the global south, are more sensible than the West European states and have refused to go along with this. So far, the US attempt to create a equivalent crisis to the situation in Ukraine in Asia has been a failure. But that, of course, doesn't mean that the United States is going to give up. To be frank, the majority of the left in the global north has totally failed in this test. It has, in the worst cases, supported the policies of the United States. That is the so-called policy of defending Ukraine, of supporting Ukraine, etc., of proclamations of new theories such as the sovereign right of Ukraine to join NATO. What a wonderful thing for the sections of the left to be putting forward. And it has failed to see the dynamic which is taking place. The Manifesto Group is one of the places which foresaw these events and has not done so. And that's why it's done. And there are increasing forces. These are scattered. But nevertheless, they are in the global north. We can contrast this with the situation in the global south, which shows quite a different picture. In the global south, the overwhelming majority of countries and the overwhelming majority of humanity has refused to go along with this policy of the United States of provoking the war in Ukraine. It has refused the sanctions. It is, in some rather surprising groups of people, have told the United States to go to hell, such as, for example, the Indian government, of which many people here will not be great fans. The Saudi Arabian government, which possibly is one of the few governments which would have even less fans, amongst the people are here, because the United States is carrying out such an attack on the people of the world that it's resisting. We also see the situation in Latin America, where fortunately, not merely has the left held out, but it is advancing. We all know that Venezuela and Cuba, despite the blockades and the sanctions, etc., have maintained the path of building socialism and continuing to orient towards socialism. And the left has been advancing in the last period in Latin America. After the disorientation after 2014 with the collapse in the commodity price boom, the US thought Latin America was going to resume being its backyard. Well, it hasn't done so. There have been many successes which have taken place in Latin America. For the first time, a leftist candidate, not extremely radical to be quite honest, has become the president of Colombia. The coup in Bolivia was successfully defeated. And we have an event at the end of this month, which of course can actually change the geopolitical situation significantly. That is, if Lula is to win the presidential election in Latin America. So fortunately, other forces are joining into the heroic resistance which has been put up to Cuba by Cuba and Venezuela, and some other forces. I don't have time to list everybody. And the Manifesto Group has been totally orientated to that. Then also we see something which is taking place at the present time in China, which is China's not gone backwards. China has gone forward. Anybody who follows the situation in China shows there is now at the present time, China has achieved the greatest success in eliminating poverty in human history in the number of people. Even by World Bank standards, 853 million people have been lifted out of absolute poverty. In China's national criteria, absolute poverty has been eliminated. China has also stood up with very skillful foreign policy against the attacks which are being made by the United States upon it. For example, in the South China Sea, the United States have been trying to create a totally artificial crisis, because in the South China Sea, the countries around the South China Sea want to get on with peaceful economic development. Fortunately, unlike the chaos in Europe, they're growing rather well. Their population is developing. I'm not a great fan of all of these regimes. I'm not a big supporter of monarchy, for example. If we take some of the countries here, but nevertheless, they have had the good sense to refuse to go along with what's happened in the United States. So we see, therefore, a very sharp division in the world. I'm afraid, amongst large part of the left in the global north, confusion, retreat, and apologies for the United States. Let's call it by its right word. The Manifesto Group has been one of the forces internationally that has not gone along with this, due to the orientation which is contained in the manifesto. And those forces in the global north should not believe that they are isolated. The forces in the global south, in China, are continuing to stand up against this US offensive and to go forward. So that's why it's good reason to have a discussion and celebrate 1 year after the production of the manifesto. We're not powerful enough by ourselves to change the situation, but you have to fight under whatever circumstance you find yourself. Unfortunately, some very powerful forces in the world are on the same side as us. So that's the perspective we have to adopt, and therefore congratulations after 1 year is in order. Thank you.
I'm Michael Hudson. I'm appearing here for the International Manifesto Group. If you like this video and ones like it, please subscribe. For more information, go to the address on the screen.